Hello, and welcome back with Perspectives. We are your lovely co hosts. That is,
Lisette.
and I am Martina. Thank you so much for joining us today, whether you're listening, watching, or you have done both. That'd be great too, and it really helps us out. We love y'all. Um, we are back today talking about, our weight loss journey. It's like, a little series we've got now. Because by this
Mhm.
point, you should have seen like the first two videos.
Yeah.
Which if you have not, I would say go back and watch those. You can do that right now, or you can do it afterwards. But you should really go back and watch. We have some good information and talking about our journey. With the first video, we really just kind of started to get into like the history of insurance because we were doing a lot of deep dives and we started talking about insurance. And, we two people that's in healthcare and, public health. And so we were looking into insurance and how insurance are just bad. But did they start to be bad? Were they always bad? That was not the intention. And then we talked about universal health care was a whole thing, but we brought it full circle and
We
brought it
sure
back
did. We
to
did.
talk about our weight loss journey. And then in this last video, we got more into yes, our personal journeys that we're on because we're both on these popular drugs that are pharmaceuticals that are prescription medication. When we say drug,
Disclaimer.
disclaimer. Lisette is on Mujaro,
Manjaro.
Jaro, and I'm on Ozempic. And so we just went and talked about our experience to date. And, now we're back and just doing this third installment. And per usual, I'll kick it over to Lisette to get us going.
Yeah, no, I think on this episode, I think we're just gonna go into maybe talk a little bit more about the controversy that really revolves around these medications, the role that insurance plays into access to the medication, and even just how people perceive the medication as well, because there's a lot of perception around these medications, and really just the healthcare kind of industry that from like actual healthcare to like health, fitness, and gurus. I know we touched a little bit in one of the previous episodes, I think the first episode on this. We touched a little bit about just some of that, but I think we're just gonna, dig in. If you hear a beeping noise, that's just it. That I,
Wait,
I
who is
was
it? I don't hear me here. Yeah.
I was like, it's right next to me, but clearly I didn't hear it. I just wanted to make sure you did hear beeping noise. That's our alarm. He turned on.
I really can't hear it. I had no beep beep. Okay.
All right. Well, I guess you know what? The noise suppression on Zoom works. If you can-
I guess that's a good point. And like in my place of employment, we use Teams, and I promise you, I can't hear nothing. Like people are like, I'm sorry, like there's construction going on, or my kid was yelling. I ain't hear nothing, honestly. Like, so I appreciate it.
Noise
Um,
suppression.
I do, because nobody wants to hear that. But if you do, it is what it is. It is what it is.
It's the world we live in.
Here's the world we live in. Speaking of the world we live in, weight loss,
Yes.
conscious.
So I know I shared in the previous episode that I follow some individuals, primarily women, who are taking whether it's Manjaro or Ozempic. There's also Wegovy. But what I found out was that Ozempic and Wegovy are essentially the same medication.
See, pharmaceuticals.
It's just that I forget who the manufacturer is. That Wegovy is marketed for weight loss only, and Ozempic is for type 2 diabetes, but they're essentially the same medication. I was like, ain't that
That's some bullshit. That sounds so interesting because so that W one, I can't do these names. That W one, so
yeah.
that one does not help control any sort of medical conditions. It doesn't like help with like, A1C, like
I think
cholesterol.
it does, because from what I've heard some more like experts say, like it's the same medication, it's just marketed differently.
That's so strange. Okay. That's
So I'm like, I think because I think they just, I don't know, they wanted more money, they wanted, I don't know,
it's always money. This world is greedy. That's
capitalism, you know.
capitalism.
Um, but so back to what I was saying before. So I follow, primarily women, and a lot of them, have shared, that they, were obese, they had insulin resistance and all these things. And one of the common sort of themes that I've seen, particularly those that are not taking it for type 2, particularly the one that I'm on. So Manjaro right now is only, I think, like FDA approved for type 2 diabetes. Like it doesn't have the approval for weight loss, but there are people who are accessing it just for weight loss. And a lot of the pushback is either you're stealing medication from type 2 diabetics, which isn't true. Nobody's stealing a medication. Or why don't you just go to the gym, eat better, and do that? So those are like the two things that I've seen around this, right? Like these two things of like either you're stealing medication from type 2 diabetics, or you should be doing, the traditional route of like, and as someone who has struggled with weight their whole life, diet and exercise isn't always enough. Because you can have the best intentions, like you are out here starving yourself, having the salads, eating, counting your calories, doing the exercises for a couple months, and maybe you lose 5 pounds,
Maybe.
and sometimes, particularly I think women who have other underlying conditions that aren't, what people would say like, oh, it's not type 2 or anything. But I was like, it is harder. And I know you mentioned in the previous episode about that, and sort of touched on it. But it's just interesting to kind of see this backlash, because I know you are on Ozempic, that's plastered all over the news. I think it says like January we saw that. And all these
Even
different,
last year, I feel. Well, last year, people
yeah.
talked about Ozempic.
So
Yeah.
it's like this sort of idea of like, and then people are like, oh, nobody knows the long term, side effects, or no, like all these things. And I'm like, these weight loss medications have actually been around for what, again, someone who's like learning is like they've been around for a while. Um, and I'm like, but you have to, some people have shared like you outweigh the risks versus where you could be going, right? Like you could be down a path where you are having, you know, high cholesterol, high blood pressure,
Exactly.
and type 2 diabetes. And to get all those under control without assistance, that's hard. Like you and I are in public health, have been, around healthcare and know how hard it is. I mean, I've heard doctors talk about, best practices with people who have comorbidities. Like it's hard because, you're talking about different medications. You might be taking two medications for one of them and then another one, and then you have like 4 or 5 medications that you're taking. Um, Plus you're asking them to uh eat better, to lose weight, to exercise more. Um, and it's tough. And if you go back and listen to the last episode, you know, I shared just how helpful this medication has been from a weight loss, perspective. Not just the type 2, but like and being able to have that ability to make the better choices, because I didn't always make the better choices. Um, because it was just, I don't know if it was just addiction to sugar, which we've talked about in the past. There are now evidence that sugar is addicting and all these things, and it's like this is helping people make better choices and prevent. But it's just kind of fascinating, but it's also sad to just hear people really just bash other people who are taking it just for weight loss, as if, I know I mentioned it before, like you should suffer and you should have to like go through it, without really thinking that if you're taking this medication 9 out of 10 times, these are individuals that have done everything that they could. Like for the most part, it's rare that I see someone says like, oh, I'm taking it just to lose like 10 pounds. Like I've not seen somebody, at least in my sort of bubble that I have on social media, that is doing that. Are there people? Probably, who kind of use that, but most individuals I've seen are women or men who have had to lose 100 pounds or more, who are losing 50 pounds or more, and who have shared like I've struggled, I've and just haven't been able to lose it. But yeah, like I'll pause and let you, Martina, kind of
You know,
share.
we live in a world of assholes, and you know, everyone has one. And there's a saying that I was about to say, but I forgot. But I think, this is say world of assholes, and we live in a world of people very vain. And it to me, it's, again, I think I've said this in maybe the first video we did on this. This is really not anyone's business, but the person who's going through it and their care team and their doctor, So I'm like, people, are saying that, well, it's kind of a lot of different controversies, but people are taken away from those who really have the diagnosis. And why do you want to take it to lose weight? Again, I think, why is it anybody's business? And if, again, I just think like in this country, we're so like focused on being reactionary that we're not even seeing how people are using this to be preventative. And I just, again, it's just like you said, people be like, oh, why are you taking it? Why don't you just go eat healthy and work out? Looks, Chad and, and
Becky.
Mackie, well,
Said Becky.
Becky worked too. Like that's just not what works for everybody else. I mean, well, works for people, and it's just so interesting and real shitty that people say, you should just go do these sort of things. And hey, how do they know that you haven't?
Yeah.
How do you know this person haven't? Most of these people, most of us in these situations have tried. And I think, we also live in a world where people don't understand that some of these things are addiction, they are hereditary. And for some reason, because people are assholes and they're so vain, their mind can't seem to get past some of these things that some people really have a difficult time losing weight, or people may have a difficult relationship with food. Like I have friends who are thinner than me, who are small, and they have a tough relationship with food. They do. And that I think for women in general, that's one thing that women always are going to be talking about. How much sugar in this? How many calories is that? How many carbs are in this? And some of it is because you're trying to watch what you eat and eat healthier. But I think a lot of it is because we live in such a vain world where people just really don't understand, or I would say maybe some people do understand, but they just don't care that these are really tough issues. And again, it could be, comparable to an addiction in many ways. And people, you will want to define addiction and how they want to. And, I know we've talked about this is considered obesity or weight loss is considered more of a physical, not a physical, a behavior ailment than like a physical. And I think that's bullshit too. Because how are you going to tell somebody who's like they have maybe been big all their life and food has always been something. And maybe again, they have tried to lose weight. They've tried to eat the nasty broccoli sometime, and that's hard. It's gonna be really hard. And I just think people I don't know, just feel like in this country, we have gotten to a point. This is very much a tangent, but we've gotten to a point where people just don't have any grace for anybody. They just like, and again, going back to these TikToks and Instagrams, people think it's so easy, for people to get up here and share their stories and talk about themselves. people just so judgmental. Like, people being open and talking about the journeys that they're going through,
Yeah.
or even if they're not, again, this is nobody's. I just feel like it's just not anyone's business. And if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't have to say anything at all. Because to me, there is nothing that will validate people being rude and just horrible towards other people. I mean, in general, but we're talking about in relation to this because I just don't understand. People have say so many angry things about it, and it's like, why are you
Yeah.
so hateful? That's my why are you so hateful? I just don't. To me, I don't know. That's just like I just don't quite understand standing from that aspect. I just really, it's like nobody's business. If you don't have anything nice to say, keep it to yourself. I don't.
Mhm.
That's just my some thoughts. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up such a good point of like it is, an individual's, journey, right? Like, and it's nobody's business what happens, whether it's with your healthcare provider and those that you choose to share with. But because I think why Ozempic in particular became such a hot topic, over the last couple months is because you saw either celebrities being connected to the medication, and this, you know kind of idea of like, oh, celebrities are taking it, like they're abusing it, but at the end of the day we don't know if there's underlying issues, if there's healthcare concerns as to why they took it, things. And it's like all you're seeing is this media portrayal of what is without, because most celebrities don't either confirm or deny, they just sort of let the news cycle do its thing. um so it's just interesting because like you mentioned, like there's all these just people who are commenting and saying things and being hateful without really having any facts, without
Like
really knowing what's going on, or what it is. And yeah, like we all have been struggling, and I'll include us because we're sharing this. We've struggled with it, and having something that is just helping prevent you know more chronic disease, like lord forbid you get to a point where you're having heart attacks, strokes, you know and other things. That's like, this is we're not a country that talks about prevention in healthcare a lot of the time, because we do live in a capitalistic society. We're talking about it's money. Like our
yeah, they
healthcare,
want us to be sick. They want you to have a heart
like
attack.
our healthcare system is a money machine. Like it makes money for you know people, companies, and these all these things. Like it's money, it's a business. Healthcare in this country is a business. um so they treat it as a business,
Yep.
which we can transition into talking about the actual pharmaceutical companies that are manufacturing these medications, and the cost associated with it, with the medication. If it wasn't for the savings card that exists, this medication $1,200 out of pocket, because most insurance, like I had mentioned in a previous episode, don't cover it. And then even like ones that are covered, I mean, if you just look at the price, if you don't have insurance, I was like, it's still in the thousands of dollars. And I'm like, well, how much does it even cost to manufacture this? 'Cause
Right. Is
it's
it
not costing you $1,000 to manufacture it, and it's the same with any medication. Like most medications don't cost an arm and a leg to manufacture, but they definitely will up the price either for you to pay out of pocket or for your insurance to, pay and cover that. And it's just it's interesting because then I see people now thinking about, oh, what would be my plan B if I can't get this medication anymore? Like, do I go to a different, medication like Wegovy or Ozempic or like things like that? Those that are like on Manjaro, because that's like the new kid on the block, and things like that. So it's just interesting to see that a medication that's actually helping and really people are seeing great results with, the one I'm on, uh, but not having insurance cover it. Like it's not part of, like I've learned so much thing with their formulary, it's not part of it, and then and if you wanted to cover, you have to like, go through this series of, other medications that may or may not work for you. Um, and you have to try them out and there's these tiers and all these things. And it's like, why why do we continue to make it so hard? And it's not just this medication, like it's a
Medication.
lot of other just, medications that, you like, oh, if it's not covered or this, and you have to go through all these, you know, barriers and sort of things that you have to go through to get it. It's like, how and why are we here? Because like, look, I pay you. Like my paycheck gets money taken away so that you will cover things. And you're telling me that you're not going to cover something that actually is helping me?
Exactly.
Like, that makes no sense.
They
I
don't.
was like, because why it's not gonna make you money or you're gonna lose money. Like you're not losing money. Like insurance companies aren't losing money. Okay, pharmaceutical companies aren't losing money. Like y'all are okay. Like you'll be fine. So it's just fascinating and like also just mind-boggling, this whole kind of thing, because I shared with you just the struggle that I go through every month to
Every,
get my medication.
like your pharmacy, like they should every month. Why is this not in the system? Every month it's the same thing.
It's either a processing issue. It's also like you need to wait an additional 5 days before we can dispense this medication to you, or you have to wait. And I'm like, oh, I'm like, okay, like, or like, oh, your insurance doesn't cover it. Like I know, like it's
We've been here before. This
I
is
was
not
like,
expensive.
I was like, we've been in this circus already. We've done
Every
this.
month. I'm here every month.
And it's this thing where it's like, because I've already had, two prior authorizations be requested for my insurance, and then like they're gonna deny it. Like it's point blank, like it's not covered. Although if someone knows how to appeal a prior authorization and maybe get some, like, hit me up, help me figure this out, because I would like this medication to be covered.
Yeah, because wow.
Because I'm like, it's helping me. I need to make a really good appeal on this. Um, but again, like it's the same thing that we talk about, just this idea, and it makes me mad and just like upset, because it's always like you need to shame fat people, you need to make fat people feel like they're less than, um even when we're trying to do something that is gonna help us be healthy or fit this image of health, that society has, and it's frustrating as someone who has to live it and has to go through it on, on a daily basis. Like, yeah, I'm not escaping this, you know. Um because it's been such a journey as being always, you know, you know, the fat kid, and then, the fat adult, and like the fat friend, and like all these things that you and I have shared on this platform before. Um, and now to see it play out in such a national kind of stage, and sort of seeing these conversations, and I think I mentioned it in one of the last episodes, of like, you have to vilify fatness and you have to do this on such a huge platform that it just doesn't make sense. And then you have, yeah, even healthcare providers, coming out against it, and saying, things about like, oh, this medication, like you're just gonna, once you're off of it, you're gonna just gain the weight back. And it's like, well, it's a medication. If you have a chronic disease, which obesity is, you might have to be on some sort of medication for the rest of your life, just as any other person. When you have a chronic disease, you might have to once in a while take a medication to make sure you're always under control. But because fatness isn't considered or isn't seen as a chronic disease by the majority of the people, then it becomes that. But I've said a lot, so I'm gonna pause.
Well, I was trying to think. I had so many different ideas, but then they kind of went, and then they came back and then went again. But you said about, even doctors are coming out and saying, oh, you're just going to gain the weight back. That that is so negative. That is just so negative. Why? That is not the oath that you took. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want a doctor that's going to lie to me, but there's something to be said about how you say something to someone, especially a patient. And you as their doctor, as a part of their care team, you should work with them. Like if food is a big thing or has played a big part in their life, and weight loss or just, being fat has been a big thing, as their physician, you should want to help them, like, not to gain that weight back. Like, what can we do to make sure that you don't gain that weight back? Do we just to keep you on this medication? Do we make sure that, that you're keeping to your eating habits? Like, to me, that's just so negative to say as a doctor, to be like, oh, you're just going to gain this weight back. You don't need to be a doctor anymore. You don't need to be, that's just so negative. But a lot of doctors say shitty things like that. And, I have to, give credit though where credit is due. I have had some really good doctors. I would say my current physician that I have now, I've been with her and I got referred to her from one of my good friends, and she's awesome. I will say, I've always been a big girl, been the big child and the big friends. And my doctor's is like this skinny little woman. But she's been there for me and has where we talk about on here or talk about people experience where their doctors have been always relate something back to their weight. You can come in there with like a splinter in your hand. Well, did you go running today? What does it have to do with the splinter in your hand? She has never done that to me. Knock on wood, hope she never does. But she has always been very understanding. And I just know, like, some doctors are just not that way. Obviously, we're talking about the ones who are not. And to me, I don't know. Again, with those who choose to go into that profession, I don't know if these people have always been that way or somewhere along the line, you start making too much money, you got too high, and you feel you can talk to people like this. And I just think, again, I can appreciate a doctor being honest with me, but there's a way you say something to someone, and to say things like that, that's just so unnecessary. Like, that person, they probably know that. They're like, yeah, I have a big chance of gaining this weight back. I do. That's the obvious. Like, let's talk about preventative. What can we do to keep you from gaining that weight back? Let's keep you healthy. I don't know. This is, that, and then the whole, you already know how I feel about insurance. Like, I've bitched about insurance many times on here, and insurance are just way overly involved in people's lives. And that is due to our government in many ways. Like we always go back to, it's very capitalistic.
Yeah.
They want you to fall out dead. Well, maybe not dead, because they won't make any money off you if you're dead. But
that's so sad.
They do. And that's what, it is sad. It's sad as hell. They want you to have that heart attack. They want you to have 5 different pre-existing conditions. So you got to pay thousands of dollars, and it's, again, like we talked about in the first video for this series, is that, I forgot explicitly what that act was that was going to be passed back in the day that would have put us on par with Europe to be able to.
I can't remember. It was almost like a universal health care.
Yeah, it was like a universal health care. Like, so we've been having, this is like a centuries old thing. Like, this universal health care in the United States it's always, been a thing. It's just a different name for it. But with that specific bill, I think that they were trying to pass, is like, if that would have happened back then, all these decades ago, we could have been where countries in Europe are, where Canada is. But no, because we think, I think a lot of people just think in terms, if people are sick, it's their fault. Like, I just, in many, and yeah, sometimes it may be, like
selfishness.
The selfishness. This is bleeding over into a whole different series.
Whole other thing. But
But
yeah,
it
it
is.
really is. Yeah.
It is. It's the selfishness. And like, hey, you know what? Someone who get lung cancer because they smoked cigarettes all their life, um, yeah, maybe they shouldn't have been smoking cigarettes. We know they know that.
They
They
know
know
that.
that. But then I think about you like my dad. Fortunately he does not have, but my dad smoked for most of his life. But you got to think, my dad was born in 1950. Like he started smoking as a teenager. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like it was a totally different way of life back then. But there are plenty of people who do have those stories that have ended up with certain illnesses, and people, I don't know, like again, people just don't have any sympathy for folks. And I don't know. I know this can be a double-edged sword. Like I know there are instances
Yeah.
where people really do cause their illnesses because they just was fucking horrible. But and I'm not talking about that right now. I'm just talking about people who, you gotta understand where people have come from. Again, like we said, this is a lot of this with being obese or being overweight is hereditary. It could all be, how someone was raised. Like, what are the social determinants of health here? Like, why is this happening? And again, we live in a world where people, I feel like they know these things, but they just don't care. They don't want to acknowledge it. They put all the blame back onto the person. They put it on the individual and give no ownership to the country, to the way systems are set up. None of that people want to take into consideration. They say, oh, well, you're going to blame it on anything. It's your fault. And that was my rant. I need some water now.
No, but I think you bring up such a good point. I think something that I've seen touched on is, you know, people just solely focusing on the individual, right? And the responsibility of the individual and like what they have to do and what they should be doing and what they haven't been doing and all these things. When in reality, you have to look at, the whole picture, right? I think about me growing up and what was around me and the environment and the access that I had or didn't have, right?
Mhm.
And I look at our communities in Chicago, the communities that you and I have worked in, um, and driving through Chicago, you see such a stark difference from community to communities and what access people have when it comes to the walkability of their community. You know, the
Safety.
the access to like healthy food. I know we've talked about this previous episode. Like there's all these things that contribute to what people are like, oh, there's an obesity epidemic in the United States. And it's like, yeah, but you have to look deeper than just the individual, and you have to look at the root causes, at the systems, at what has been put in place in a lot of our communities to keep people unhealthy, to deliberately keep us away from things that would help us you know be better and have access, which leads then to generations of behavior or just things that are just passed down from generation to generation that now just become a part of your environment and who you are, and having to struggle to make those changes. um it's not easy, and I think that is like the core thing that I've just from hearing other people's journeys on these medications, um and hearing and and us, you and I sharing our journeys to each other, like is so much more than just diet and exercise. I hear diet and exercise all the time.
Mhm. So,
I it's around me and they're like, oh, just eat better, eat more vegetables, add more green, have a better salad, all these things, and I'm like, it's not that easy. Like, I don't understand why people are like, it's not an easy thing to do. Um, because sometimes it's just genetics, it's health, it's something that you just have that is not allowing you to lose weight. It is just, you can be doing this. Like I know in the past I've done the things like you said, like we've all probably done everything that everyone has told us and it continues to tell us. Like I've done the, eating healthy, like I, mentioned before, like counting calories, or like, oh, drinking so much water, so that it's just all these things, and it's like I'm still the same. Like it's just maybe I'll lose, a total of 10 pounds after struggling and sort of having all these different things. And then you have, people have mental breakdowns, people have these things because they're so focused on wanting to just lose the weight that you forget there's a whole other, aspect of of this journey, that you just kind of get lost in it and sort of thinking that way. But I think, insurance plays a role. I think the pharmaceutical companies and how they, um I don't know if they advocate or what they do, like what can they do to ensure that this medication that they're creating becomes accessible to people.
Mhm.
um there's so much there's so much to talk about on that aspect of it. We don't have the time to get into uh pharmaceutical manufacturing companies and sort of the accessibility of just medication um in general, and sort of what that means to people, and being able to have life-saving having access to life-saving medication. Because I honestly think the medications that we're taking, they're life-saving, like,
Yes, it really can be.
and like, yeah, are we fortunate to have uh the ability to access it either through insurance or through, other means. For me, it'll be a period of time. My period of time will come to an end at some point, and then I'll have to figure out a plan B on what that's going to look like. If by the time, you know being able to access that savings card ends, what does that look like for me? Like, what that'll be. So, I think there'll be more to come from us two on this journey.
Yes.
um Definitely want to explore more on the insurance side of things, on the pharmaceutical companies. Who knows, maybe we'll have people come and join us in the conversation from those two industries, maybe, who knows.
Yeah.
um but definitely, want to have others share their journey as well, and what they've kind of have experienced with these medications. So, we'll hopefully be able to have some other individuals come and share um their process and their thoughts around the medication, and how how it's helped them, how it's maybe changed their lives, either, for the better, I hope. We all kind of,
Or maybe not for the about, we want to hear those stories too. Maybe
yeah,
something didn't work out,
you
everybody's
know
body's different.
and maybe one medication didn't work, but maybe the other one did, and things like that. So definitely, this won't be the last episode on this. Martina and I will be on this journey for a while. um and we'll definitely share a little bit more as we progress and see where we're at. But yeah, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this topic, that although we're talking about, the medications and weight loss and obesity, it's so much more deeper than just that topic. It definitely is digging into the systems and the structures, and the role that healthcare plays, and the role that, you know the systems play in healthcare, that the role that the pharmaceutical companies and then the insurance plays, and also our government. Like, we didn't even touch that, we didn't even get into the role that our government plays in that. But I'll kind of kick it over to you to kind of share some final thoughts, Martina.
Yeah, I mean, you did. That was a nice synopsis. That was a good wrap up. I just wanted to share one thing. We talk about TikTok all the time, and
Yep.
that's never going to stop until something else, comes on. That's better. Um, but that, talking about, people just being so quick to judge people. I was watching this TikTok, and I believe I saved it. This woman on there who I think she's gone through her own kind of battle with food, and she was talking about, how she's trying to incorporate more greens into like her day to day. And she was eating lunch in her car, and she basically, it's like a 3 or 5 minute video where she's talking about, she's trying to help people basically say, like, you know if you don't like, greens or like salads, but you want to try it. She was basically like giving people suggestions and giving them recommendations on how to do it. And she was like, maybe there's a certain, sort of green that you like, whether it's spinach, it's iceberg, maybe you like the crunchiness of that, maybe you like the taste of kale. She's like, start with things that you like and add to it. She was like, maybe you want to add some red onion, maybe you want to add tomato. She was like, start small and then like build up over time, because her salad, it was pretty much just like greens. It was like, I think she might have had iceberg, she had sprouts, she had some it was a mixture, and she really, like, I don't think she had much else. It wasn't like any, I think she did have some sort of protein. It might have been like chickpeas or something she had in there. And there were people in the comments were like, I feel so bad for people that didn't grow up liking vegetables. They were like, how do you not like vegetables?
Mm.
And I mean, it wasn't a lot of people, but it was like there were some comments in there.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, see, you grew up in a household apparently where maybe you could afford vegetables, or maybe, even if you didn't, maybe if you couldn't afford it, you had access to it somehow.
Yep.
And maybe for you also, even if it wasn't a matter of resource, maybe your parents, they didn't grow up eating vegetables. So when they had their own kids, that wasn't a focus for them. Maybe they didn't focus on teaching their kids how to eat vegetables. So it's like so many different ways that can be interpreted. And, again, I don't know if these people were trying to be hateful or not, but I was like, that's a comment you could have kept to yourself. Everybody may not like, I don't like broccoli. That's why I mentioned it earlier. But will I force myself to eat it? Yes, I do. I'll force myself to eat it because it's healthy for me. And I would say, like, don't get me wrong, like, I think more now, my mom and I eat healthier probably than, probably in past years. But, I did grow up with some vegetables. Broccoli was not necessarily one. But just to say, you don't always know somebody's struggle. This woman's on there trying to have an informational video to help people, tell them how to, integrate this food into their life if it's something that they want. And people just like, oh, I feel so sad for people who don't do that. How can you not like this? You don't know people's lives. So all this to say, would love to hear from people. We just ask always that you are respectful. If not, we will, we of course will bring it to your attention. But we would love to hear, people's journeys. Even if it's not you, maybe it's a friend or a partner or a family member, somebody who might be on this journey and going through this, and maybe they've had great experience. Maybe it's like they're still on it. Maybe some people haven't had a great one. We would love to hear, just because we know this is such a hot topic, and it has been for a few months now, and which is why we wanted to bring it here and talk about our experience. But we'd love to hear from other folks. And that's it.
All right. Well, thank you, Martina, for those final thoughts and sharing that. And thank you to those that are watching or listening to us. As Martina mentioned, please share your thoughts, your comments. If you're on YouTube, you can comment below. If you're listening to us, please reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram. You can always find us there. And we look forward to continuing this conversation. As if you've been with us for a while, we do series, and we always circle back to the topic later on. And like I mentioned earlier, we hope to kind of bring other voices to this topic and to this table around this, and be able to kind of share a little bit more. And we'll be continue sharing about our journey, whether it's to here or even maybe on our social media. We'll share some quick updates there too. So make sure you're following us on Facebook and Instagram to kind of also hear a little bit about our journeys on there as well. But again, thank you, and we will see you and talk to you next time.
Bye.